far, we have talked about the first two principles for building your ambition. Number one, positive self-direction. Number two, self-reliance. And number three is self-discipline. The third principle for building your ambition is self-discipline. Of all the subjects we've covered so far and are about to cover, none is more important than covering the disciplines for success. What's at the core of achieving the good life? The major key to the good life. The major key is not in learning how to set goals. It is not in learning how to better manage your time. It is not in mastering the attributes of leadership. Every day in 1,000 different ways, we are trying to improve ourselves by learning how to do things. We spend a lifetime gathering knowledge in classrooms, in textbooks, in experiences. Now, if knowledge is power, if knowledge is the forerunner to success, then why do we fall short of our objectives? Why, in spite of all our knowledge and in spite of our collective experiences, do we find ourselves aimlessly wandering, settling for a life of existence rather than a life of substance? There may be many answers to this question. Your answers may be different than your associates or your spouses or your friends. While there may be many answers to this question, the fundamental answer is the absence of discipline. Applying all that we know. That's the key word, discipline, self-discipline. We might add one more word here, consistent. Consistent self-discipline. It doesn't really matter how smart you are or how much you know if you don't use it. It doesn't really matter that you graduated magna cum laude if you're stuck in a low-paying job. It doesn't really matter if you attended every seminar that comes to town if you don't apply what you've learned. Better than knowledge is applied knowledge. And once we've applied our knowledge, we must study the results of that process. Apply our knowledge, study the results. Refine our approach. Finally, by trying and observing and refining and trying again, our knowledge will inevitably produce worthy results, admirable results. And with the joy and results of our efforts, we continue to apply, to learn, to observe, to fuel our ambition with the positive reinforcement of continued progress. Pretty soon, we'll find that we're swept into a spiral of achievement, a vertical rise to success. And the ecstasy of that total experience makes for a life of triumph over tragedy, dullness, and mediocrity. But for this whole process to work for us, we must first master the art of discipline, self-discipline, consistent self-discipline. It takes consistent self-discipline to master the art of setting goals, to master the art of time management, to master the art of leadership, to master the art of parenting and relationships. If we don't make consistent self-discipline part of our daily lives, the results we seek will be sporadic and elusive. It takes a consistent effort to truly manage our valuable time, or we'll be consistently frustrated. Our time will be eaten up by others whose demands are stronger than our own. It takes discipline to conquer the nagging voices in our minds, the fear of failure, the fear of success, the fear of poverty, the fear of a broken heart. It takes discipline to keep trying when that nagging voice within us brings up the possibility of failure. It takes discipline to admit our errors and recognize our limitations. The voice of the human ego speaks to all of us. Sometimes the voice of ego says that we should magnify our value beyond our results. It leads us to exaggerate, to not be totally honest. It takes discipline to be totally honest, both with ourselves and with others. Be certain of one thing: every exaggeration of the truth, once detected by others, destroys our credibility and makes all that we say and do suspect. As soon as a business colleague figures out that we tend to exaggerate, guess what? They'll always think we exaggerate, and they'll never quite hold us in the same regard again. Never. The tendency to exaggerate, distort, or even withhold the truth is an inherent part of all of us. It starts when we're kids. Johnny says, "I didn't do it. I didn't do it." Well, maybe Johnny didn't do it, but he probably had something to do with it. And then it continues when we're adults, exaggerating the benefits of a product to make a sale, exaggerating our net worth to impress old friends, exaggerating how close we are to closing a deal to impress the boss. And only an all-out, disciplined assault can overcome this tendency. It takes discipline to change a habit, because habits are formed a little bit each day, every day, every day. Once habits are formed, they act like a giant cable. They act like a nearly unbreakable instinct that only long-term disciplined activity can change. We must unweave every strand of the cable of habits slowly and methodically until the cable that once held us in bondage becomes nothing more than scattered strands of wire. It takes the consistent application of a new discipline, a more desirable one, to overcome one which is less desirable. It takes discipline to plan. It takes discipline to execute our plan. It takes discipline to look with full objectivity at the results of our applied plan. And it takes discipline to change either our plan or our method of executing that plan if the results are poor. It takes discipline to be firm when the world throws opinions at our feet. It takes discipline to ponder the value of someone else's opinion when our pride and our arrogance leads us to believe that we are the only ones with the answers. With this consistent discipline applied to every area of our lives, we can discover untold miracles and uncover unique possibilities and opportunities. Now, if discipline is the key word and if discipline is the key action, then what exactly is discipline? One good answer might be that discipline is a constant human awareness of the need for action and a conscious act by us to implement that action. Discipline is an awareness of the constant need for action and a conscious act to implement that action. If our awareness and our implementations occur at the same time, then we begin a valued sequence of disciplined activity. Now, here's the other side of discipline. If there's considerable time that passes between the moment of awareness and the time of our implementation, then that is called procrastination. Procrastination, doing it tomorrow instead of today. Procrastination, an almost exact opposite of discipline. The voice within us says, "Get it done." Discipline then says, "Do it now." Do it to the best of your ability, today, tomorrow, and always, until finally the worthy deed becomes instinctive. Procrastination says later, tomorrow, whenever I get a chance. Procrastination also says do what is necessary to get by or to impress others. Do what you can, but not what you must. In every circumstance we face, we are constantly presented with these two choices. Do it now or do it later. Discipline and procrastination. A choice between a disciplined existence bearing the fruit of achievement and contentment or procrastination, the easy life for which the future will bear no fruit, only the bare branches of mediocrity. The rewards of a disciplined life are great, but they're often delayed until some time in the future. The rewards for the lack of discipline are immediate, but they are minor in comparison to the immeasurable rewards of consistent self-discipline. An immediate reward for lack of discipline is a fun day at the beach. A future reward of discipline is owning the beach. For most, we choose today's pleasure rather than tomorrow's fortune. So how can you get rid of the easy distractions? How can you keep your mind on what you're trying to do? How can you keep an attitude of doing it all and doing it now? How can you make the choice of discipline over procrastination? How can you stay focused on your ambitions? How can you avoid conversations at the water cooler? You can keep your focus on your work. You can get it done today instead of tomorrow. You've got to really work on your consistent self-discipline on a daily basis, or you'll find yourself distracted. Distracted by negative thoughts, distracted by negative people, distracted by water cooler chatter, and pretty soon, depending on the type of people you've associated with, distracted by your doubts within yourself. Never underestimate the power of influence and associations, and never underestimate the power of your own consistent self-discipline. Now let's take a closer look at discipline, at the 3 steps to becoming disciplined. First, true discipline is not the easiest option. Most people would rather sleep until 10 o'clock than get up at 6. It's easier to go to bed late, sleep late, show up late, leave early. It's easier not to read. It's easier to turn on the television than to open a book. It's easier to do just enough than to do it all. Waiting is always easier than acting. Trying is always easier than doing. Imagine what life would be like if we didn't have to make our bed in the morning, or keep our garage clean, or pay our taxes, or show up for work tomorrow. Wouldn't it be fascinating if we didn't have to do these things? Wouldn't it be fascinating? What do you suppose would become of us? You're right, not much. For whatever the reason, the system we live in and contribute to is designed to make the easiest things in life the most unprofitable. Profitable seems to be the most difficult. Our world is and always will be a constant battle between the life of ease and its momentary rewards and a life of discipline and its far more significant rewards. Each has its own price, the price of discipline or the price of regret. We will pay one or the other. What we wish we had done is the voice of regret, speaking in a sorrowful tone at a time when there is no going back. This is regret. No second chance. No, what would I do differently? Choose one or the other, but both will have their price, the price of discipline or the price of regret. One costs pennies, the other a fortune. Dostoevsky said, "There are hundreds of young men who would die for the truth, but very few who would spend 5 years studying to know what the truth is." Dying for the truth is much more dramatic than the discipline of studying it one little piece at a time, one day at a time, 1 month at a time. But in the big picture, is dying for the truth really easier than adhering to the daily disciplines? The first lesson of discipline is that it isn't the easiest option. The second lesson of discipline is that it's a full-time activity. And we've said that the best form of discipline is consistent self-discipline. You see, the discipline that it takes to make your bed every day is the same discipline necessary for success in the world of business. The discipline to organize your garage is the same discipline to organize your business. All disciplines carry through to affect all parts of our lives. If we're disciplined in just one area and lazy in another, guess what? Pretty soon, the lazy side will creep in and destroy the disciplined side. The bad habits in one area of our life will eventually destroy our self-discipline in the areas we've been working on. Consistency cannot be inconsistent. Discipline is the mind being trained to control our lives. Discipline is a set of standards which we've selected as a personal code of conduct. Discipline is imposing on ourselves the requirements for honoring these standards. Once we've adopted these standards of behavior and conduct, we're committed to honor them. And if we don't, then there can be no disciplined activity. We find ourselves announcing our standards to our relatives, our friends, our associates. We shout our beliefs and condemn those who believe any differently, but then we don't walk the talk. We end up acting in a way far different from the beliefs we've shouted. We tell our kids that the TV is rotting their minds, yet we spend our evenings in front of it. We tell our employees that they must take advantage of every minute of the working day, yet we spend 3 hours at lunch. Do as I say, not as I do. This is inconsistent. This leads to a loss of credibility among those who watch us. And more importantly, this leads to a loss of credibility within ourselves. The only thing worse than one who is inconsistent in applying their self-imposed disciplines is one who has never considered the need or the value of discipline at all. These people seem to wander aimlessly, changing procedures, changing standards, changing loyalties, and shifting frequently from one commitment to another, leaving behind a trail of broken friendships, unfinished projects, and unfulfilled promises, all because of a discipline that was either non-existent or imposed so infrequently that it was ineffective. Here's the third step to becoming consistently self-disciplined. Number 1 is realizing that discipline isn't the easiest option. Number 2, discipline is a full-time activity, day by day, every day. And the third step to becoming self-disciplined is really a philosophy that holds one of life's unique promises. Number 3 simply says, for every disciplined effort, there is a multiple reward. That's one of life's great arrangements. It's like the law of sowing and reaping. In fact, it's an extension of the biblical law that says if you sow well, you reap well. Now here's a unique part of the law of sowing and reaping. Not only does it suggest that we'll all reap what we've sown, it also suggests that we'll reap much more. Life is full of laws that both govern and explain behaviors. But this may well be the major law we need to understand. For every disciplined effort, a multiple reward. For every disciplined effort, a multiple reward. What a concept. If you render unique service, your reward will be multiplied. If you're fair and honest and patient with others, your reward will be multiplied. If you give more than you expect to receive, your reward is more than you expect. But remember, the key word here, as you might well imagine, is discipline. Everything of value requires care and attention. Everything of value requires discipline. Children require discipline. They must have a structure built for them. They must have boundaries to work within so they feel secure and comfortable to explore and grow. They must learn to recognize what's right and what's wrong, what's acceptable behavior, what's not acceptable. Children require unwavering discipline, consistent discipline, or they'll be confused as to how they're supposed to behave. Likewise, our thoughts require discipline. We must set up our inner boundaries, our codes of conduct, or our thoughts will be confused. And with confused thoughts, we'll end up being confused, hopelessly lost in the maze of life. And confused thoughts produce confused results. Look around you at this very moment in time. What might you be doing that needs attention? Perhaps you're listening to this program as you drive along in traffic, blowing your horn at someone ahead of you who isn't driving at the speed you'd like to. Perhaps you're listening alone because you've had a disagreement with someone you love or someone who loves you, and your anger won't allow you to speak to that person. Wouldn't this be an ideal time to examine your need for a new discipline? Perhaps you're on the brink of giving up or starting over or starting out, and the only missing ingredient to your incredible success story in the future is a new and self-imposed discipline that will make you stay longer and try harder and work more intensely than you ever thought you possibly could. The most valuable form of discipline is the one that you impose on yourself. Don't wait for things to deteriorate so drastically that someone else must impose discipline into your life. Wouldn't that be tragic? How could you possibly explain the fact that someone else thought more of you than you thought of yourself? That they forced you to get up early and get out into the marketplace when you would have been content to let success go to someone else who cared more about themselves. Your life, my life, the life of each one of us is going to serve as either a warning or an example. A warning of the consequences of neglect, self-pity, lack of direction and ambition, or an example of talent put to use, of discipline, self-imposed, and of objectives clearly perceived and intensely pursued. Now, can too much discipline be a bad thing? Can you possibly be too disciplined? Too much of anything is a bad thing. Life without balance results in an unbalanced life. Walking around the block every day is good. Walking or running 6 hours a day is bad. It's obsessive, unless, of course, you make your living as a marathon runner. Then you're doing your job. Eating an apple a day is good. Eating only apples is bad. You won't get all the protein and vitamins and nutrients your body needs. Working hard, burning the midnight oil, doing it until is good. Working nonstop, never taking a vacation, never having any fun, never spending quality time with the people you love, working day after day, month after month, never taking a break year after year, is bad. If you've got your nose to the grindstone all the time, how are you ever going to spot new opportunities, consider new ideas? It doesn't work that way. You've got to stop and ponder where you've been and where you're going. You've got to reflect so you know if you're even on the right track. Everyone has heard the story of Willie Loman in the play Death of a Salesman. Willie was a workaholic. He typified the old-fashioned concept of success. After all, if you're always working, you must be successful. No, it doesn't work that way. For workaholics, there's never enough work. They can work 10, 12, 14 hours a day, take 2 jobs, work them back to back. The only satisfaction is fighting off sleep, denying life's pleasures, getting more tasks done. Some people are impressed with this type of behavior. But just because a workaholic spends too much time working, that doesn't mean he or she ends up with the most money. These people are generally more task-oriented than results-oriented. They're busy being busy, not busy being productive. Workaholics generally end up alienating their families, losing their health, facing a crisis of values. Now, wouldn't you prefer a life of productivity rather than a life of tasks? Of course. When you schedule your time and take advantage of your time, you can work smarter instead of working longer, and you'll probably end up getting more done than the workaholic, and still have time for other things in life. Enlightened self-interest says, I will look for new ways to work smarter by focusing on doing more per hour instead of doing more hours. It says I will run my day so my day doesn't run me. Enlightened self-interest also says that a life worth living comes from a life of balance and moderation. Too much of anything, even good things, will sooner or later throw you off track. Now, here's a key technique that you can use in your life to help keep you on the right track. This technique is called visual chain thinking. Ambitious people don't see each step toward their goals as a singular step, each discipline as a singular discipline, each project as a singular project, each sale as a singular sale. With everything they do and with every discipline they adhere to, they see it all as part of a chain, a link in the chain of events and actions that will lead them to their final destination. Every action and every discipline today is a link in the chain. Every action and every discipline tomorrow is a link. Every action and every discipline in the future is a link. When you can see that every link in the chain will eventually lead you to the things you want most out of life, to the person you want to become, then you won't grow discouraged or fearful or impatient with today. When you can see where you're going through visual chain thinking, even on the toughest days, you'll keep building your ambition by knowing where you're going, not just where you are today. Part of this visual chain thinking is built when you decide on your direction, when you can see where you're going to end up before you get there, when you can see California while staring at the east side of a 14,000-foot mountain. And building your visual chain of thought begins when you have well-defined plans for your career, your family activities, your investments, and your health. Your plans and goals are your visual chain, knowing where you're going before you get there. Develop a plan, a game plan. It's ironic how we all understand the importance of mapping out a strategy for a football game or a basketball game. Not one professional team in the world begins a game without a complete strategy. But few of us take the time to map out a strategy for our lives, a game plan. But it's important. Here's the first rule for your game plan of life. Don't start your day until you have it finished. Don't begin your activities of the day until you know exactly what you plan to accomplish. Don't start your day until you have it planned, and do this every day. I know all this writing takes time and a disciplined effort, but remember that value is the fruitful result of discipline, not hope. Once you've mastered the art of planning your day, you're ready for the next level. Don't start your week until you have it finished. Don't begin your activities of the week until you know exactly what you plan to accomplish. Don't start your week until you have it planned. Just imagine what life would be like if you took time out of every Sunday to plan your week. Come Friday, you won't be saying, "Boy, did this week fly by. Where did it go? What did I do?" No, if you plan your week before you start it, you'll know exactly what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, what you need to work on. If you learn to plan your days as part of your overall game plan for the week, the parts will fit much better. Your days will be better, more effective. You'll be working smarter, not harder. And when you've learned to plan your week, guess what? You've got to plan your month. Don't start your month until it's finished. By developing a game plan for your days, your weeks, your months, by developing and following your game plan, your days and weeks and months all become part of a bigger plan, a bigger design, a long-term view of your life, a visual chain. You'll start gaining a greater perspective of it all because you are planning. It takes great discipline on your part, but it will soon lead to a new habit, a habit of mastering your time, a habit of discipline that will lead you to the good life. Now, if visually seeing the future is new to you, if you've never developed a game plan before, let me offer a few tips. There are two things that you need to understand before you create a game plan. Number one, a game plan, a visual chain of your future, is like a spreadsheet. Instead of listing numbers, you list activities. It's like a to-do list. And number two, the technique of developing a game plan can be used for a single day, a single project, or a variety of projects that are happening simultaneously. Here's how you do it. First of all, you need to buy a pad of graph paper. Game plans work best on graph paper. So take a sheet of graph paper and make vertical columns of the number of days this plan is to cover. Then on the left-hand side of the paper, write the heading Activities. Under this heading, list all of the activities to be accomplished within your time frame. Let's say, for example, that you've got 1 week to finalize a marketing plan. It's an overwhelming amount of work to complete, but it's got to be done. So break it down piece by piece. The best way to start is by listing all of the individual components on the left-hand side of the page. Now, some of these things need to be completed before others can be started. You need to have your market research results in before you can determine your target market. You need to know your target market before you can develop your marketing strategy. You need to have your marketing strategy before you can create a budget for collateral materials, and so on. When you break down the project piece by piece, deadline by deadline, you can be more effective in delegating the appropriate pieces of the puzzle. And you can be more effective in doing your own work while orchestrating the rest. The final result of developing a visual chain, your game plan, is a clear visual presentation of the tasks before you. Keep your game plan in plain sight. Put it up in your office where you can easily look at it. Have a copy of it at home and tape it to the refrigerator. Keep a copy in your journal for quick reference. Your game plan will serve as a constant reminder of all that you need to do to get where you want to go. If you're doing all that you're scheduled to do, game plans are very rewarding. And the discipline of developing and following a game plan is exciting. Day by day by day, week by week by week, month by month by month, you'll see the magic of your dreams and plans turning into reality. It's an incredible feeling of being in charge of your life, your surroundings, your future. It's like creating a work of art on the biggest canvas imaginable. It's creative. It's beautiful. This is powerful stuff, to dream a dream, plan for the dream, and then to watch your dream turn into reality. And what's really powerful about creating game plans is that you can see your future right before your eyes. So on those days when your energy isn't up to par, your enthusiasm is a little low, your ambition isn't pulling you, and your attitude isn't on the high side, on those days, use your game plan to see how far you've come and take time to realize just exactly where it is that you're headed for. On those days, it's your discipline and visual chain of the future that will pull you ahead. It can't possibly set you back. It'll pull you ahead. Develop a game plan for your life and make sure that it includes more than work projects. Make sure that your game plan includes time for recreation, time for reflection, time for exercise, time for health, time for spirituality. Let's say you've developed your plan and you've penciled in writing a report from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Well, what if you don't do your best report writing this early in the morning? What if you do this kind of work best at 3 in the afternoon? Then juggle your projects around a little. Know yourself well enough to know what you do best at different times of the day, of the week, of the month. Know the best time for you to accomplish a certain type of task and schedule it during those times. You have to work with your game plan in order for it to best work for you, and you have to maintain the discipline of working your plan until what? Until you've got it down. In the end, it is your own discipline that acts as the magic catalyst to give substance and depth to your ambition, to achieve your own plans and dreams, to have what you want to have, and to become what you want to become. Your consistent self-discipline is the magic catalyst. The ultimate question cannot be whether you are going to make the fundamental disciplines your own. The ultimate question is when. With the intense and consistent application of worthy disciplines, we have the individual and collective capacity to change ourselves, our incomes, our attitudes, our lifestyles, and our effect on other people. We can change opinions. We can change leadership. We can even change the direction of our nation. We have the chance, we have the capacity, we have the answers, and we have the ability. The elements are all there, including the freedom to try. Only the discipline is missing, and that element and the decision to use it lies within all of us. The choice is ours. So far, we've discussed the three principles of building your ambition. Number one, positive self-direction. Knowing who you are and where you want to go. Number two, self-reliance. Taking responsibility for your own life. Taking full responsibility for whatever happens to you. Number three, self-discipline. Creating the need for action and implementing that action every day, every day, every day until it becomes a way of life, a good habit. And the fourth principle of building your ambition is building your enterprising skills. Building your skills to be self-enterprising, to consistently create opportunity, new opportunity, to consistently take advantage of the opportunity that you've created, to be aware, to face life with your eyes and ears open to the possibilities that may be just around the corner. An enterprising person is one who comes across a pile of scrap metal and sees the making of a wonderful sculpture. An enterprising person is one who drives through an old, decrepit part of town and sees a new housing development. An enterprising person is one who sees opportunity in all areas of life. To be enterprising is to keep your eyes open and your mind active. It's to be skilled enough and confident enough and creative enough and disciplined enough to seize opportunities that present themselves, regardless of the economy. An enterprising mortgage banker will develop creative financing strategies during slow markets. An enterprising lawyer will study new laws and market herself to people who may need help in those areas. An enterprising salesman will research beyond the obvious to find new prospects for his products or services, isolate a secondary market, develop another benefit. An enterprising attitude says, find out before action is taken. Do your homework. Do the research. Be prepared. Be resourceful. Do all you can in preparation of what's to come. Think of a few people you know who are enterprising. Think of people in the news, in your office, in your neighborhood. What do these people have in common? Well, they're probably always on the go, developing a plan, following a plan, reworking the plan until it fits. They're probably very resourceful, never letting anything get in their way. They probably don't understand the word no when it applies to their visions of the future. And when posed with a problem, they'll probably say, let's figure out a way to make it work, instead of, it won't work. You need to be like that pesky little Energizer bunny. You need to keep going and going and going. Self-enterprising people always see the future in the present. Self-enterprising people will always find a way to take advantage of a situation, not be burdened by it. And self-enterprising people aren't lazy. They don't wait for opportunities to come to them. They go after the opportunities. Self-enterprise means always finding a way to keep yourself actively working toward your ambition. Self-enterprise requires two things. Number one, creativity. Creativity to see what's out there and shape it to your advantage. Creativity to look at the world a little differently. Creativity to take a different approach. Creativity to be different. And what goes hand in hand with the creativity of self-enterprise is number two, the courage to be creative. The courage to see things differently and the courage to go against the crowd. the courage to take a different approach, the courage to stand alone if you have to, the courage to choose activity over ease. And activity generally relates to how you feel about yourself, understanding your self-worth, how valuable you are. What could you do if you had all the skills, took the classes, read the books, burned the midnight oil? What could you do? What true value could you develop? This is one of the better exercises. What could I become? What could I really do in the marketplace? In enterprise, home, family, experience, love, friendship, marriage. How valuable could I become? Am I valuable enough to work on what's not working so I can reach my full capacity? If I'm operating at 20%, what could I possibly do with the other 80%? Once you start understanding how valuable you are, it's a whole new experience. Understanding self-worth, it plays a major role in our ability to be self-enterprising. Our self-worth makes the difference between being lazy and being active, being self-enterprising. If we don't feel good about ourselves, we won't feel good about our lives. And if we don't feel good about our lives, we won't be very interested in looking for opportunities. So you see, being self-enterprising doesn't just relate to the ability to make money. Being self-enterprising also means feeling good enough about yourself, having a great enough self-worth to want to seek advantages and opportunities that will make a difference in the future. Enterprise is always better than ease. Every time we choose to do less than we possibly can, it affects our self-confidence, our self-worth. If we keep doing a little less every day, a little less, every day that we keep doing a little less, we are also being a little less. Can you imagine what you'd end up being after 10 years of doing a little less every day? It's devastating. Think about it. Doing less could ruin your life. Now, you can reverse the process of doing a little less. You can reverse this process by using your self-direction, your self-reliance, your self-discipline. You alter the course by doing a little more each day. A little more. And pretty soon, you'll develop a new habit of doing rather than neglecting. And days and weeks and months of doing a little more will ultimately do what? It'll increase your confidence and your courage and your creativity and your self-worth. In the end, it's how we feel about ourselves that provides us with the increased courage and creativity for self-enterprise. It's how we feel about ourselves that provides the greatest reward from activity and enterprise. It's not what we get or what we accumulate that makes us valuable. It's what we become that makes us valuable. Success isn't in the having. Success is in the doing. It's the process of doing that brings value. It's the activity that transforms our dreams into reality, that converts ideas into actuality. Self-enterprise is found in the activity, for without activity we'll miss the opportunity. Let me tell you what I think most messes with the mind. I think that simply doing less than you can messes with the mind. It causes all kinds of psychic damage. I think being less than you can be, trying less than you could try, doing it with less enthusiasm than you could do it, messes with the mind. It somehow damages the mind. It damages our self-image. Because here's what I've discovered happens. The minute you turn this around and start extending yourself, you'll see immediate rewards. Maybe not monetary ones, not yet, but it's how you feel about yourself that's the greatest value. You see, it's not what we get that makes us valuable, it's what we become. Discover all you can do, see how much you can earn, how much you can share, how much you can start, how much you can finish, how far you can reach, how far you can extend your influence. Some people out there would have us believe that positive affirmation is more important than activity. Instead of doing something constructive to change our lives, they would have us repeating slogans and canned affirmations like every day and in every way, I'm getting better and better. Well, getting better and better doesn't just happen from wishful thinking. Getting better and better only happens with the discipline of doing better and better. Discipline is the requirement for progress, and affirmations without discipline are in reality delusions. Now, don't get me wrong here. There's nothing wrong with affirming the good life as long as we are disciplined enough to take action. Affirmations can be effective as long as we remember two very important rules. Number one, we should never allow affirmation to replace action, activity, enterprise. Feeling better is no substitute for doing better. And number two, whatever we choose to affirm must be the truth. If the truth happens to be that we're broke, the best affirmation would be to simply say, I'm broke. Wow, face it, accept it, be responsible for it, and change it. By admitting that you're broke, by saying it out loud, you'll probably be disgusted enough to start the thinking process on how to change it. Anyone saying I'm broke with conviction will most likely be driven from ease into action. Confronting harsh realities has an incredible effect. Confronting the truth and then applying the discipline to express the truth instead of disguising it inevitably leads to positive change. And reality is always the best beginning. You see, within reality lies the possibility to create our own personal miracle. Our own personal miracle, and the power of faith starts with reality. If we can bring ourselves to state the truth about a situation, then, as the saying goes, the truth will set us free. Here's another old saying, faith isn't faith unless it's all you're holding on to. If your life and circumstances have resulted in a situation that is ugly, call it ugly. If you've lost it all, admit that you've lost it all. Be responsible to it. And if faith is all you've got left, use it. Create your own personal miracle. Once we understand and accept the truth, the promise of the future is freed from the shackles of deception. Once we accept the truth, the promise of the future will pull us. Here are some creative techniques that'll help keep you on the right track toward that promising future. Remember, creativity is the first requirement for self-enterprise. Number one, think on paper. You can't take a trip to somewhere new without a roadmap. You can't build a house with the plans in your head. You can't build a company with the business plan in your head. You can't seek venture capital with the financials in your head. But here's what you can do. Put it all on paper. Your roadmap, your blueprints, your business plan, your financial projections. When you put it on paper, you can analyze your path, solve your problems, and isolate what works and what doesn't. You can use this for your life as well. If you're faced with a mental roadblock, put it all down on paper. Like we talked about before, when you put a problem on paper, you take the emotion out of it. With the emotion gone, you can look at the roadblock objectively. You can figure out what you did right, and you can figure out what you did wrong. You can figure out how to change it. So here's what you do. Pick a problem out of your head and pull out a piece of paper, then draw a line down the middle. On the left-hand side, jot down the problem. Just what is the problem? Write it out. We've got so much going on in our heads that we can't figure things out until we take a piece of it out and put it on paper. What is the problem? This is the problem. State it the best you can. The doctor says, oh, you look good. Come and see me in a year. And you say, no, doc, I'm hurting here. He says, no, that's negative. Just be positive. No, we've got some negative stuff we need to deal with. So what is the problem? State the problem. Write it down. Now, on the other side of this paper, You put the answers or the solutions. And I've got 3 questions to ask in order to find the answers. And by the way, these 3 questions can be used to solve almost any problem. Here they are. The first question you need to write down is this: what can I do? What can I do? Because you don't want to go any further than that if you can solve it yourself. What can I do? Then what you do is develop working papers. You start jotting down. I could do number 1. I could do number 2. I could do number 3. Here's some alternatives. Then you start analyzing them. Let's see, number 3. No, that one would take too long. I haven't got that much time. Okay, number 2, not sure. Okay, let's look at number 1. Maybe this is my best one, the one I thought of first. Now, if that won't work, here's number 2. What could I read? Maybe there's a book on my problem. Somebody spent a lifetime trying to figure out this problem. Maybe it's written out in concise language somewhere to give you the instant benefit of someone's advice. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Do your homework and find the solution. And then you start developing some working papers on what you're reading. Book number 1, this guy's crazy. Book number 2, this guy's too shallow. Book number 3, this guy's got some interesting things to say about this problem. I'm telling you, if you want to solve a problem, the best questions to ask are number 1, what could I do? And number 2, what could I read? Don't miss the book that could help. So I'm asking you, don't sell yourself short here. You can find some answers. Now first, try to find them yourself from your own experience. Then second, if you can't find them yourself, now ask, what could I read? Go to the library. Go to the bookstore. Search your own library. Go back through your own journals to find the stuff that's been helpful and valuable to you. And see if maybe you've made some notes that could be helpful in your situation. Now, if that doesn't work, then ask question number 3. And question number 3 is, who could I ask? Now, guess what you're prepared with when you ask somebody to help you? You've got your working papers to show them. You say, I've got my working papers. I've tried my best to figure it out myself, and that finally left me short. Here are some of the books I've read. I've researched this material, and I'm still short. Now could I possibly ask you, and could you possibly help me? You can't believe how willing somebody will be to help you if, first of all, they've gotten the idea that you were willing to help yourself. So if you've got a problem, pull it out of your head and put it down on paper. Then ask yourself, what can I do? And if that doesn't work, ask yourself, what can I read? And if after researching all you can, you still can't come up with the answer, ask yourself, who can I find to help me? I promise you, if you try these ideas and ask these questions when you've got a problem, you'll be able to solve about anything that gets in your way. The second step to keeping yourself on the right track and being self-enterprising is to develop the ability to brainstorm. Develop the ability to brainstorm. We hear this term all the time, but what is brainstorming? Just what it sounds like, letting your brain go. Being free from all the inhibitions and objections and negatives. Just putting an idea into your brain and letting it take off. Free associating. Not planning a train of thought, but thinking freely. Now, if you're planning a creative strategy session with your associates, a brainstorming session, let me give you a little hint. Effective brainstorming can only happen if you're free from your ego. You can't be worried about saying something stupid or silly or something totally off the wall, because your silly thought may trigger someone else's brain to take it one step further. Brainstorming in a group is an experience of collective thought, an experience of developing one idea or several ideas through a variety of thought processes. Here's another hint on brainstorming. It can't be effective unless everyone involved is comfortable with each other. If you don't feel comfortable within the group, you may withhold the very thought that provides the solution to the problem. You may withhold it because you don't want to appear stupid. How do you think all the advertisements you see on TV and in the magazines get created? How do you think some of those crazy campaigns are born? The process happens through hours and hours of creative brainstorming and working papers. Every member of the team jots down notes, and one idea builds on another idea, and another, and pretty soon a campaign is born out of the collective thoughts of the group. Now, I don't believe that the best decisions are made by committee, but great ideas are often created by committee. That's number 2 to keeping on the track of self-enterprise. Finding answers through brainstorming, whether you're letting your brain go by itself or whether you're part of a group. Brainstorming can often lead you to solutions. Solutions you'd never have thought of if you'd imposed parameters on your thought process. Here's number 3 for creatively keeping on the track of self-enterprise. And it's really an extension of number 2. Number 3 says, imagine outlandish solutions. Get your brain out of the ruts by considering ideas without considering their practicality. Consider ideas without considering how practical they are. You see, if you allow yourself to think without confinement, you may come across a solution that seems totally inappropriate. But guess what else this type of thinking will do? It'll allow you to open up the process, which will eventually lead to totally appropriate solutions. The 4th creative technique for keeping yourself on the right track to self-enterprise is through flowcharts and doodles and formulas. That's right, doodling. The thing you got in trouble for in grade school is actually quite stimulating to the brain, because the way you think while doodling is quite different than the way you think while creating a flowchart or writing a formula. Your doodles may end up looking like some symbol that will trigger your brain to think of an alternative solution. Drawing creative doodles wakes up a different part of your brain. Try creating a flowchart showing the path to success. What does it look like? Is it a straight course? Is it a varied course? Does it have a lot of curves and corners and different angles? Try creating a flowchart to success. It doesn't matter if it ends up being accurate or not. What matters is that it's stimulating the creative thought process. And once you awaken that creative part of you, you'll be amazed at the opportunities that were always there, ones you never saw before. It's all a matter of how you look at life and opportunities. The 5th method of creatively staying on the self-enterprising track is to access the information highway. It's amazing the kind of information that comes across the phone lines these days. With your computer, either your home computer or the one you've got at work, you can go online with hundreds of services. You can access stock quotes. You can access worldwide newspapers. You can do research. You can call up a bulletin board and directly ask questions of other users. You can make new contacts, develop an entirely new network. By taking advantage of the electronic age, you can learn more than you could otherwise learn, meet people that you'd otherwise never meet. You can find information that your library may not have. You can share information and transfer files that you've never before been able to share. Many people are afraid of their computers. They don't take advantage of all their system has to offer. Work with your computer. Find out what types of information and services you can access. Use it as a new resource, a new specialized resource that's yours for the taking. The 6th technique for staying on track: commit yourself to learning. Feed your mind. Sharpen your interest in 2 major subjects, life and people. Learn how you can better interact with others. Learn more on how to get the most from life. Learn all that you can so that you can become all that you can become. Learning is the beginning of a life worth living. Learning is the beginning of wealth. Learning is the beginning of happiness. Learning is the beginning of health. Learning is the beginning of spirituality and faith. Learning and searching is where the process of creating your own personal miracle begins. Learning is the beginning of self-enterprise. So there you have the 6 steps in creatively building your self-enterprise traits and ultimately building your ambition. Number 1, think on paper. Number 2, develop the ability to brainstorm. Number 3, imagine outlandish solutions to your challenges. Number 4, try to think in a different way using doodles, flowcharts, and formulas to spur your thought processes. Number 5, access your computer's capabilities to reach the information highway. And number 6, commit yourself to learning all that you can learn in an effort to become all you can become. Those are the 6 steps to creatively developing your self-enterprise. Now here are some tips on the second component of self-enterprise: courage. Ambition requires courage. Ambition requires that you stand up for what's right and fight what's wrong. Ambition requires that you hold on to your values in pursuit of your success. Ambition requires that you fight off fear. Fear is one of those things, one of those emotions that can stop people dead in their tracks, foregoing success and achievement. Fear can stop people from taking all that life has to offer them. Fear can rear its ugly head in many ways. Remember the old saying, "You have nothing to fear but fear itself." You can be afraid of success. You can be afraid of failure. You can be afraid of looking ridiculous. You can be afraid of change, either positive or negative change. You can be afraid of the competition. You can be afraid of loss and destruction. We're not always born with courage. We're not always born with all the fears either. You ever hear of a baby that's afraid of the dark? Of course not. They grew in the dark for 9 months. They should be afraid of the light. But do you ever hear of a 3 or 4-year-old afraid of the dark? All the time. Where'd they learn that fear? Who taught them that the dark outside is any different than the dark inside? Where'd they learn that? Well, probably from their parents who decided they needed a night light on. The kids probably think that they should be afraid of the dark if their parents insist that a light be kept on. And what about other fears in life? Are they learned? Well, maybe. Maybe some of your fears are brought on by your own experiences, by what someone has told you, by what you've read in the papers. Now, some fears are valid, like walking alone in a bad part of town at 2 in the morning. If there isn't fear, there's probably a bit of ignorance. And that type of ignorance can easily be solved by either education or experience. Once you learn to avoid that situation, you won't need to live in fear of it. Fears, even the most basic ones, can totally destroy our ambitions. Fear can destroy fortunes. Fear can destroy relationships. Fear, if left unchecked, can destroy our lives. Fear is an enemy. And let me tell you about some of the other enemies we face, enemies on the inside. One of the enemies that you've got to destroy before it destroys you is indifference. What a tragic disease this is. Ho-hum, let it slide. Drifting away from your ambitions. Here's one problem with drifting. You can't drift your way to the top of the mountain. Next one, an enemy inside all of us, indecision. Indecision is called the thief of opportunity, the thief of self-enterprise. It'll steal your chances for a better future. Take sword to this enemy, indecision. Next enemy on the inside is doubt. Sure, there's room for healthy skepticism. You can't believe everything, but you can't let doubt take over. Doubt the past and doubt the future and doubt each other and doubt the government and doubt the possibilities and doubt the opportunities and doubt yourself. I'm telling you, it'll destroy your life and destroy your chances. And empty your bank account and empty your heart. Doubt is an enemy. Go after it. Get rid of it. Next is worry. We've all got to worry some, but don't let it conquer you. Let it alarm you. We've all got to be alarmed, but we don't want to be conquered. Worry is useful. 3 o'clock in the morning, your daughter's not home yet. You've got to worry. Step off the curb and one of those zealot taxis is coming. You've got to worry. But you can't let worry loose like a mad dog that drives you into a small corner. Here's what you've got to do with your worries. Drive them into a small corner. Whatever's out to get you, you've got to get it. Whatever's pushing on you, you've got to push back. Guess where illness is in your life? Illness is constantly testing the outer edges of your health plan, looking for a weak spot. And if illness can find a weak spot, it'll muscle in and take the territory. Unless you've got enough discipline and power to say, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to fight illness like an enemy. I'll work on my health plan enough to destroy it. The next enemy inside is overcaution, the timid approach to life. Timidity is not a virtue. It's an illness. And if you let it go and go and go, it'll conquer you, leave you without a promotion. Timid people don't get promoted. They don't advance and grow and become powerful in the marketplace. And it's possible to conquer it. Do battle with the enemy. Do battle with your fears. Do battle. Build your courage to fight what's holding you back, keeping you from your ambition. Do battle. Have the courage to fight back. Be courageous in your life and in your pursuit of what you want and who you want to become. Here are a few techniques to help build your courage. Number 1, put all remote possibilities out of your mind. Don't worry about things you have no control over. Don't spend your time thinking about all the bad things that might happen to you. Don't spend your time plotting and planning ways to make sure these things will never happen to you. Courageous people don't worry about the unlikely, things out of their control. They concentrate on what they can control. Number 2, face your fears before you start something. Imagine difficult situations before they occur. Make a list of the worst that could happen, and you'll probably see that it's not so bad after all. A friend of mine lost everything a few years back: home, cars, possessions, antiques, art, jewelry, credit, lost it all. So now, on her way back up, whenever she's faced with a tough decision, she asks herself, what's the worst that can happen? And guess what? She's already been through the worst and survived, so it's not an issue anymore. Now, you don't have to lose everything to lose that particular fear, but what I'm saying is, once you face your fear, you can move on. Once you've itemized out the worst that could possibly happen, you'll see that you have the inner strength to deal with it. And if you've looked at the possibilities beforehand, you'll probably never be faced with the situation at all. Why? Because you've already thought about it. You've already thought it through. And by contemplating what might happen, you'll chart your course to make sure that it doesn't. So the first courage-building technique is to put the remote possibilities out of your mind. The second, to face fears beforehand. And the third technique to build your courage is to imagine the alternative. See in your mind the end result of giving in to your fear. Really feel the cost of being ruled by fear. Then really feel the gain of following your ambition courageously. Weigh the two. See the difference. If you've been invited to address your national sales convention and are scared to death of public speaking, what should you do? Well, you could decline the invitation, knowing full well that your fears are holding you back, or you could take some classes, read some books, practice in front of a video camera, and see yourself stepping up to a whole new league, gaining more notoriety in your field, increasing your opportunities for future success. Once again, it's your choice. Be fueled by your fears or face your fears. It all depends on how you can live with yourself, always afraid of taking the next step. When you plot out your course for success, you know that there'll be some touchy moments when fear may get the best of you. But remember, if you use your visual chain thinking, if you can see your future ahead of you, if you really want what you're going after in pursuit of what you'll become, if you really have ambition, then you know that true success comes from taking the enterprising route.